Meantime, Democrats continue to demand President Trump's tax returns, but so far the administration not budging. The Treasury Secretary telling lawmakers today he feels he's following the law by not turning them over. Both sides after the break. Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin telling lawmakers he has no idea who wrote a draft IRS memo that leaked to the press. The memo said the agency must turn over President Trump's tax returns to Congress unless the president cites executive privilege. Mnuchin has refused to comply with the subpoena to release the returns, and the memo contradicts his argument that Congress must have a legitimate legislative purpose for requesting them. The Fox Business Network's Hillary Vaughn reporting live on Capitol Hill. Hillary.
Trace, well, the Treasury Secretary saying today under oath that that draft memo never landed on his desk. In fact, he didn't see it until this morning on his way to the committee hearing.
The conclusion of that memo directly contradicts the conclusion that you're relying upon.
No, I actually don't believe that's the case. That memo, I understand, is addressing a different issue.
Who at the IRS would have made the decision not to run this memo up the chain?
I have no idea.
Are you going to plan to find that out?
We're trying to find out who wrote the memo, where it came from, when it was, and why it wasn't distributed, yes.
Mnuchin also says that this memo contradicts what their legal team and the DOJ has told them, that it would be unlawful for them to hand over the returns to Congress.
Do you know what he's hiding? I mean, he doesn't want anybody to see him, certainly not Congress.
I don't think he's hiding anything, but
okay,
no.
So you don't know?
Correct. I don't know anything about his tax return.
All right. Why haven't you complied with Chairman Neal's request?
Because I think that would be unlawful.
Mnuchin told the committee today there's no smoking gun here. He said the only reason why he won't hand over the returns is because he thinks it is unlawful, but if a court tells him to do it, he will.
And Hillary, Democrats are getting at least a bit closer to getting some of the president's tax returns.
That's right. Fox News confirming that New York State has passed a new law that would allow Congress to access Trump's state tax returns in New York. A progressive advocacy group cheering their win in New York, writing in a statement, quote, "In order to circumvent this stonewalling, New York lawmakers are providing a new avenue for the House Ways and Means Committee to obtain these crucial financial documents. As soon as this bill becomes law, all Chairman Neal will have to do is ask." So that legislation is headed to New York Governor Andrew Cuomo's desk, and if he signs it, Democrats in Congress will finally get a sneak peek at the returns that they have been waiting for. Trace.
Hillary Vaughn live for us on Capitol Hill. Hillary, thank you. Well, this tax battle is just another example of the Democratic push to investigate President Trump. The reason the president said today he will not work with them on legislation. Let's bring in Elena Treen. She is a White House reporter for Axios. And Elena, give us an idea of the timing of this whole thing, because it's fascinating. When did the president first learn today that Nancy Pelosi accused him of a cover-up, and then what happened after that?
So essentially what happened was, yes, the speaker made those comments about the president, saying that she believed he was engaging in a cover-up, although, again, she did not go as far as saying she thought that he should be impeached, or she thinks he should be impeached. And from my sources in the White House said that the president was furious when he learned of this. And this was before they even came to the White House and entered the room. And so the meeting was essentially over before it began. But I think a good thing to keep in mind is that infrastructure was never going to happen. I think what the bigger issue here now is what his comments today, saying that he will not cooperate on any sort of bipartisan legislation until these investigations end. What does that mean for other things like the negotiations for the USMCA and that trade deal, where a lot of people on the Hill were optimistic about that as recently as yesterday?
So if infrastructure was never on the table at all, it was not going to happen today, why not just cancel the meeting? I mean, it appears that President Trump wanted to say his piece. He wanted these people in the room. He wanted to walk in and say his piece. That sounds like a fair assessment.
Right. Well, we've seen these meetings before, and you never really know what's going to happen in them. A lot of the congressional Democrats will come to the Hill. They try to hash out some sort of agreement. Most of the time, they do not stick to the topic, and other things come up, and that's exactly what happened today. It ended up not being about infrastructure or, you know, how many infrastructure weeks there have been over the course of his presidency. It kind of ends up turning to other issues. For example, what the speaker said this morning about believing that he engaged in some sort of cover-up.
I'm curious because I was talking to our Capitol Hill producer, Chad Pergam, earlier, and I was talking about this impeachment train, how big it is, how much steam it's got. And he said, depending on who you talk to, that's the answer you'll get. The numbers we've been hearing, Elena, are that they don't really have nearly enough to impeach, but yet the snowball is kind of rolling down the hill.
Yeah, the pressure for impeachment is definitely growing, and I think a really good question is how long Speaker Pelosi can kind of stave off those people in her party that are calling for this. I think that there's really not another Democrat in this country who is in a better position to hold off these growing calls for impeachment than Speaker Pelosi. But and the view on the Hill seems to be that if she did put her foot down and say no to impeachment, the different chairmen wouldn't be able to defy her wishes. But there are going to be continued call for this, especially as the White House continues to stonewall their requests and their subpoenas. And depending on how much they can get from the courts, I think they're going to really continue these calls to begin impeachment proceedings against the president.
Because it's a very open question about who wins in this thing. That really is the bottom line. And right now it's kind of unknown. Elena Treen, good to see you. Thank you so much.